Hello and welcome to the Vancouver Real Estate blog. I'm Amera.
I'm Wilfred.
If you like our video today, please give us a big thumbs up and subscribe for more. We have tons of content coming out in the new year. So without further ado.
Today's topic is land assembly. What is a land assembly, Amera?
So really simply put, a land assembly is multiple lots of land that are sold all as one, typically to a developer. From there, there's this really common term called FAR. What is FAR?
Yes, what is FAR? FAR is floor to area ratio. So it is a ratio that the developer or people in general use to calculate how much usable space versus the plot of land. So for example, if you have a big tower, each floor will have a lot more FAR than, for example, a duplex, because duplex is only, so many levels compared to a high rise. So typically, and the more FAR or FAR you have, the higher or the more money you will be able to sell your property.
Yeah, so basically how much you can use your land, right?
Exactly, yes. Basically, the usable land, the livable land, if you will. Let's talk about the steps involved in a land assembly. What is the first step?
Yeah, so in a land assembly, the first step is going to be a land appraisal, so understanding the value of your property. And then the second step we go into would be a group presentation. So these are just generic steps. There's a lot more niche specific ones that do occur and are actually quite common, so just reach out to us if you have those questions. But for the circumstance today, we're going to say it's a group presentation where we're going to come to an agreement on how much everybody would like to sell for. And it's great to do that as a group because then there's a lot of transparency available to the sellers.
You can even do that on Zoom.
Yeah, we saw a lot of that during COVID.
Exactly. And
step 3 and 4, do you want to go into those?
Yes.
Okay.
So step number 3 will be to market, proactively marketing for the land assemblies. So that means reaching out to developers, putting a big for sale sign with land assembly in front of your yard. It's not necessary, but it does attract buyers out there. Step number 4 is to receive the offers from those buyers, and from there we negotiate and then potentially accept or decline offers.
Great. And then what are some of the top pieces of advice that we provide to our clients when they're looking at being a seller for the land assemblies?
Right. Yes. So that's where we come in, or your realtor comes in. Reach out to them. It would be great to have one of us or your realtor review all the terms and conditions, the price, the dates, everything else, as well as refer you to a lawyer as well. Obviously, there's a lot of legal terms that is foreign to the average person, so that would be number 1 advice. And what is the number 2 advice? Yeah,
so the second piece of advice is going to be to understand your risk. So in land assemblies, it's a high risk, high reward. That's why you're getting more for your property, is because you are taking more of a risk. So just kind of doing an analysis on that for yourself and making sure that it is something you want to do. It's not a bad thing. If you look at the stock market, sometimes people invest in high risk, sometimes people invest in low. It's all just about knowing what you're looking for. Financial advice is going to be the third step here, and it's essentially just, again, taking a look at if you can afford the risk involved in being a part of a land assembly. So for example, you may have in residential sale an investor who can afford if the value of a home goes down, versus you may have a end home user who's looking to purchase a home for themselves and they're putting everything they have. The person who's investing has a lot less risk because they have more finances available to them. They're just in a better situation for that purchase versus someone who's pushing themselves to be able to afford a property. So same with land assembly, you're going to want to keep in mind what the risk is and make sure that it's the right decision for you.
And number 4 would be that it's a shared and equal commitment between all the sellers or owners. So, for example, at the beginning of the year, I had an assembly that one of the owners changed their mind, so it didn't go through. So that's something that is important for you to know as a seller, because things like that happen and it's just part of a process. Because there's so many different owners, as you can imagine, sometimes even one household can't really agree. So think of it as multiple household. So again, high risk, high reward, but there are things that can change. That's why it's important to have that group presentation, that group sort of understanding, so that everybody's on the same page and everybody goes together as one and present like a package that is coherent for the potential developers or buyers out there. And what is number 5?
The piece of advice that I wanted to highlight today in our video is going to be understanding that this is a long-term game. So, for example, you may be obligated to keep yourself in a contract for, say, a year, 2 years, 3 years. And with that in mind, you're not going to want to do renovations to your house because you're not going to be able to sell it for a higher price point. Because of that, you may decide you want to move but not have the funds to do so because your home is currently sitting for a development project or for a land assembly project. So just keep in mind, like we mentioned, high risk, high reward. There are some commitments that you do have to make in order to be a part of a land assembly. And again, it's not a bad thing. A lot of people make a lot of money off of these, and there's a reason why people do decide to sell. But it's not for everybody. So just know kind of what you're getting yourself into, essentially, would be our advice. Some of the reasons a seller might want to get involved in land assembly is going to obviously be for the money. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yes, that is pretty obvious.
Yeah, that is the reason why. But some of the things that can play into that is going to be if there's a guaranteed deposit. So some developers, most developers will guarantee some kind of funding if you're locking into a deal. So let's say that they are unable to fulfill their side because zoning doesn't go through XYZ. They may be obligated to pay you out a certain amount.
And one thing also I want to mention on that is sometimes, we talked about this earlier, that you don't want to be the seller that is stuck between 2 towers.
Yeah.
Right? Because you will experience, first of all, a lot of noise, and also the value of your property will go down. So it's most of the time for money, but also for not to be isolated between towers also. I think we've seen that in the movie Up.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. I even saw that, like, where I grew up. I remember we had a Walmart get built, and it was a bunch of super centers around it. There was like a Canadian Tire, all that. And this one house did not want to sell their home, and so it was the one house that you drive by every time you went on the highway. And I never really understood. I always felt bad too because that was their home. So anyways, long story short, we don't want you to be left in that situation. Typically people decide to sell because, you know, if everyone else is selling around you, it just makes the most sense for a lot of people. So
yeah, we do understand that it is your home, and you know, there's so many memories, and yeah, it's just like something that will never be able to be replaced. That's why it's not a easy decision for sure. That being said, what to do next when a buyer approaches you? Sometimes they do knock at your door, or one of the realtors, like ourselves, knock on your door and ask you, you know, whether you want to sell. So what shall we do then? Or what shall the sellers do then?
So I think more than anything, we just wanted to share with you guys some questions you can be asking if a developer were to come to your door. We want to make sure that you guys are protected. This is not legal advice, so do, you know, go grab a lawyer, go grab a realtor for yourself, make sure that you're protected in those areas. But as a general rule of thumb, we do recommend that you start asking a lot of questions. So if someone's coming to your door, a few things you can do to kind of assess the situation is ask who the developer is or who would be purchasing the land. Asking what kind of buildings they're planning on developing, so whether they're going to be putting up high rises, if they're looking at putting in, you know, a school, if they're looking at putting in condos, townhomes, whatever it may be. It'll give you a better idea as to the profits that they're anticipating. And then just getting an idea of who else has sold can be a really good thing to consider and to ask. If you've had, you know, 5 out of 7 people on your side of the street sell, it may be something you'll want to consider a little more heavily. And then asking about the time frame as well. So is the development planning on starting in the next 3 years? Is it planning on starting the next year? Do they have any kind of, you know, tentative approval or whatnot? What does that look like? So just getting an idea of really what they're proposing to you, essentially.
Yeah, that's, again, getting as much information as possible would just give you overall idea whether to entertain what they're offering or not, and whether it's worth it, whether it's the right timing. And something that I would add is also, like you mentioned already, to verify if there's any sales. Of course, if you want to know how to get that info, feel free to reach out to your realtor or ourselves, and we can dig further, call the city on your behalf, and do all that kind of stuff for you.
Yeah.
So, that being said, so we're gonna end this video with one last piece of advice to take home.
So last piece of advice for you guys is to have someone in your corner who can negotiate for you. It's an invaluable skill, especially when you're dealing with something a little bit more high stakes as well. And so just make sure you're not leaving money on the table. That's all the advice we have for you today. We took so much time trying to kind of condense this information, so it's not full scope. Do reach out to us if you have specific questions, and we'd be happy to help you out. So.
Yeah, thank you for watching again. This was a general overview of land assembly. Again, more than happy to answer any of further questions you may have. Or happy holidays, and we'll see you in the next one.
Yeah. Happy New Year, guys.
Bye-bye.